So I'm here to really deal with my people and where we have been going wrong and what would be the ultimate consequences if we don't make some corrections and make them immediately. I would first like to say to the youth out there that I am very sorry that we as a people have not done right by our children and by our youth, that we indeed have given them a lot of false information, and we have not equipped them to really know how to maneuver upon the planet and to win this war that we are obviously in. So I would like to send out a very sincere apology.
Archaeologists can tell us in astonishing detail how modern humans lived. But to understand who we are and where we come from, we must look at our genetic heritage. Genetic Eve, the woman from whom we all descend, was not the only woman living at the time, or even the most fertile, but her mitochondrial genes were the most successful and the only ones to survive. Everyone alive today can trace a common ancestral line back to this one woman through a unique part of our DNA, mitochondrial DNA. DNA, the blueprint of life, is our own molecular pin code and uniquely identifies each of us. Mitochondria are tiny structures found inside nearly all human cells. It is separate from the normal chromosomal DNA that dictates our height or the color of our eyes. Men inherit it from their mother, but they can't pass it on. In women, it carries on from mother to daughter, down the endless generation almost unchanged. And this is how we can trace our way back to our genetic Eve and her daughters. So written within it is the history of the world's women, and therefore the human race.
Dark-skinned woman is the original human being on this planet, the first man, the womb man. We dealt with that. Her name is Mother Zedekias. It is the woman whom no one knows from whence she came. This is the way it's presented in Masonic lore. But we unraveled that mystery as Zedekias being the ancient word for zodiac. And there's a Greek translation of Zedekias in the Greek dictionary as the blueprint of the universe that corresponds with your physiological nature, spiritually and physically. The 12 ganglionic centers in the body represent the 12 concepts of the zodiac. But we're talking about flesh and blood when we talk ethnic. That which distinguishes you from any other family. Understanding the substance of melanin verifies originality. We are, and have shown and defined that we are the lords of the earth. That is our ethnocentric name, which means that's the name of your blood, your genetics, your brain, your chemistry, given from our ancient parents, that what keeps making dark skin, broad nose, thick lips, furrowed hair. That's ethnocentric. Geographically and nationally, political and government-wise, we are Americans. That's where we live. That's where we pay our taxes. And that's who owes us some money.
There's female-male balance. Just as there's female-male balance in the universe, there's female-male balance in all of this life. So who are we, the most humble beings on earth, who are the most vulnerable beings on earth? We're even more fragile than a flower. There's flowers that will grow through snow. Bare, naked. We can't survive in snow bare naked. So here we are, learning to live with the female, because the female teaches men how to nurture. To put it simply, it's much more than this, but there's this balance, and we seek to maintain that female-male balance. And the females live longer than men. Duh! You know? The human female is the only being on earth that's been chosen by the great mystery to be purified with the moon. With the moon. They're purified naturally. My God, we're men. We don't live as long as we know nothing about purification from within. So we have to create our purification rites. Hence the sauna, or the inipi, the purification lodge. So we have this, and they teach men how to nurture. If you don't know how to nurture, then you're going to be afraid. And in that fear, you know, my ancestor, Chief Luther Standing Bear, who wrote a book, first part of this century, called My People the Sioux. And he wrote another book, The Land of Spotted Tail. No, The Land of the Spotted Eagle. I'm sorry, The Land of the Spotted Eagle. And he said, if you don't know the forest, you will come to fear the forest. And what you fear, you will want to destroy. That's patriarchy, because they're out of balance. The first living thing they fear are their women, because they have no understanding of women. Women have this other sense, which the white male calls, what is it called? I lost it.
Intuition.
It's called intuition. That's what he calls it. I call it sacred knowledge. This ability to see things clearly. This ability to feel. And think of the woman, how she goes from a child into a woman who is naturally purified. And she goes through this life rearing children, teaching men how to nurture and be in balance, and then reaches the change of life, and where she becomes the elder that lives longer than men and has this full woman power. Until you know a woman, you'll never know life. And so our ceremonies here on this earth are to celebrate womanhood, to learn minutely. So we go through the inipi, the purification lodge, the sauna, so that we can feel, have some little notion of what it's like to be purified. And we go through the sun dance and tear our flesh and create the blood, because we want to have a minimal understanding, at least, of what childbirth is all about. When she tears her flesh and gives her blood to create life. What is patriarchal societies? The world over, I don't care if it's Islamic, Judaic, Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, they're all male gods. I've yet to see a male anything give birth. I'm sorry. So, therefore, it's impossible for them to create. Duh! So they've come into this full flower of womanhood. And you'll know in indigenous societies, and indeed in all societies, but when an elderly woman speaks, people listen.
Patristic philosophy culminated in Augustinianism, which may best be defined as Christian Platonism. Opposing the Pelagian doctrine that man is the author of his own salvation, Augustinianism elevated the Church and its dogmas to a position of absolute infallibility. The term patristic is employed to designate the philosophy of the fathers of the early Christian Church. Patristic philosophy is divided into two general epochs, ante-Nicene and post-Nicene. The ante-Nicene period, in the main, was devoted to attacks upon paganism and to apologies and defenses of Christianity. The entire structure of pagan philosophy was assailed and the dictates of faith elevated above those of reason. In some instances, efforts were made to reconcile the evident truths of paganism with Christian revelation. Eminent among the ante-Nicene fathers were Saint Irenaeus, Clement of Alexandria, and Justin Martyr. In the post-Nicene period, more emphasis was placed upon the unfoldment of Christian philosophy along Platonic and Neoplatonic lines, resulting in the appearance of many strange documents of a lengthy, rambling, and ambiguous nature, nearly all of which were philosophically unsound. The post-Nicene philosophers included Athanasius, Gregory of Nyssa, and Cyril of Alexandria. The patristic school is notable for its emphasis upon the supremacy of man throughout the universe. Man was conceived to be a separate and divine creation, the crowning achievement of deity, and an exception to the suzerainty of natural law. To the patristics, it was inconceivable that there should ever exist another creature so noble, so fortunate, or so able as man, for whose sole benefit and edification all the kingdoms of nature were.
And it's very important. So we're talking about a phase or a realm of the Great Mother that is taken over. You see what I'm saying at this particular time? Fortunately for the black male, and I will explain this, that the reason why you are locked down and you are on lockdown simultaneously with all the hells that your woman catch, and you catch hell in a grave manner, in a massive manner, is because you're the only human on the planet that is equally woman. And I'm not talking about homosexuality, but I'm talking about equally feminine. Equally feminine. You're the only one. So in so many words, and we will go into this particular aspect in a few minutes. But so, not only is it this realm, this feminine realm that's come in, it's the feminine realm of both the black man and the black woman, because deeper studies have come out about Isis and Osiris, or Aset and Osar. We notice have this in India, and these deeper studies, like the book, The Passion of Isis and Osiris. What's the name? I got that woman's name. She used to, she's dead now, but before she died, she was with Hillary Clinton and them. What's that woman's name? Jean Wolfe. She was one of Hillary Clinton's astrologers. So, you know, these people, you know, there ain't no president sitting up in there that ain't in a cup. She's she's the wife of Robert Masters, and Robert Masters is the one that wrote the book, The Goddess Sekhmet. Now, The Goddess Sekhmet that book was out of print for years. That book just came back in 2003 or 2002. I think it came back in 2003. So Robert Masters' book, The Goddess Sekhmet, is back out. This is his wife. She wrote a book called The Passion of Isis and Osiris. And the concept here is that Aset and Isis and Osiris are nothing but twin halves of the same entity. The same entity. And in all, from Yoruba, Voodoo, they always have the twins. They also have a twin called the Acalion. So what we're talking about here is at this particular time, you're going to have to fight hard to try to understand your species have, even if you don't have a mate, you're going to have to try to fight hard to understand that you are all one. And so these gender roles are going to have to go to an androgynous level. I'm not talking about on the sexual realm. We're talking about mind here. We're talking about advanced esoteric and metaphysics. This is what I teach. So we're not talking about the sexual aspect, but we are talking about a god called, the goddess Shiva. And you know, Shiva is nothing but a form of Osiris and Horus. But there's an entity called Shiva Hermaphrodite. So we're talking about, and they show pictures of them, both male and female, Sheba with one breast, and on one side is a female and one side is a male. Well, that's nothing but his mate, Shakti or Parvati, when they make a sacred union through heterosexual sex, but they come together in unison as one entity. So you're going to have to, in order for you to become whole, you're going to have to take, if you're a male, you're going to have to take your search for your female counterpart within you. And if you are a female, you're going to have to search for your masculine counterpart, which is in you, because all of these are expressions of the goddess.
Tonight's presentation on Ethiopian queens.
The great Ethiopian queen.
The great. All right, we're going to pretty much just jump right in. I'll just give a little background again. I'm with the Egyptian scholar and historian, Dr. Charles S. Finch.
First, it's important to know when we talk about Ethiopia what we're talking about, okay? Today, when we talk about Ethiopia, we're talking about a specific country on the Red Sea in northeast Africa, all right? And that's our idea of Ethiopia. However, Ethiopia was a much larger geographical entity in antiquity. And actually, there were other names for it even before it took the name Ethiopia. Ethiopia is actually a Greek name, Greek word. It means land of the sunburnt faces. Historically, when we start talking about historically, the first known or the first famous Ethiopian queen known to history was Makeda. Makeda was queen of what is now called Saba or Sheba, all right? She was the queen of Sheba, all right? And she inherited the throne from her father. And she ruled over, as I say, Ethiopia that stretched from what is now Ethiopia all the way across Yemen and into Arabia, Syria, northward into what we think of as Libya, even into southern Egypt. She reigned for 50 years. And she had established trade relationships with Solomon. And of course, there's a famous story in the Bible about how she got curious about Solomon because his reputation and his fame began to spread beyond Israel. And there is a story that she went to visit him with her entourage, her vast entourage. And of course, she was welcomed with all due honors as a visiting monarch. In fact, as a visiting monarch, because she ruled a country larger and far more powerful than Israel was at this time. That was about 1000 BC, okay, 1005 BC. And there's, of course, a story that she and Solomon became enamored with one another to such an extent that they actually produced a child, a son, by the name of Menelik, all right? Menelik went back to Ethiopia with his mother, and the Ethiopians today claim descent from that same Menelik. All right, Menelik, and that's a 3,000-year history. That's the thing about Ethiopia all the way up into the time of Haile Selassie, to the end of Haile Selassie. It was a 3,000-year dynasty, the longest dynasty in history anywhere. Wow. And even now, Menelik is an important name in Ethiopian history, and the Ethiopian royalty traced their origins back to Menelik, who was the son of Solomon and Makeda, or Solomon and Sheba. And so the Ethiopians, therefore, claim Solomon as one of their ancestors or one of their ancient kings, you might say, ancient rulers, through Makeda. And Makeda ruled the Queen of Sheba. Remember, Sheba, as I said, would have been not only what we think of as Ethiopia, but also what we think of as Saudi Arabia and Yemen, all right? Now, Saudi Arabia and Yemen back then the people didn't look like what they look like now. They were Ethiopian looking, okay? We could spend a lot of time talking about that. They were fundamentally Ethiopians. And Ethiopia, that was part of Ethiopia. That was considered, in fact, Eastern Ethiopia, all right? So Makeda was famous in history as the Queen of Sheba. And especially that interlude, as it were, between her and Solomon that produced Menelik, that started a 3,000-year dynasty. They call it the Solomonic dynasty in Ethiopia. Now, let's kind of go forward from there. Let's even go into what we call Kush. because back in the time we're talking about, there was no name Ethiopia given to Ethiopia. That was later. The Greeks gave what we call Ethiopia that name. It was called Kush or Kesh. All right, and Kush is what encompassed what is mostly now thought of as the northern Sudan and parts of Ethiopia. Now, Kush is important at very important times in the history of Northeast Africa. Ancient Egyptians came from Kush. They're originally Kushites. Okay, they came from the south. All right, and Kush established its own kingdom. Let me think. Several times. One was in 3000 BC, and the other one was about 800 BC. All right. Anyway, Kush is what we think of when we think of what became Ethiopia. Now, during what they call the 25th dynasty, right before the 25th dynasty, Egypt itself was in a bad state of decline and chaos. Now, there was such a close nexus between Kush and Egypt that they were, I don't know how you would put it. In other words, it was kind of like England and Scotland, if you will. All right, that's the closest I can come as an analogy. And so when Egypt started to decline and disintegrate, the Ethiopians, what we call the Kushites, came from the south under Pianke northward to restore order in Egypt. And that wasn't the first time that happened. That was about the third time that when Egypt was under tremendous internal collapse, that it was out of the south that a pharaoh or a king would come in and restore order and reestablish the civilization. Pianki, from again what we think of as Kush or Ethiopia, the northern Sudan, did the same thing. And by that time, the most important, after the king, the most important individuals in Kush were his sisters or his mother.
Queen Mother.
The Queen Mother. The Queen Mother, it was a very, very, very important position. It was second only to the pharaohs, the Nubian pharaohs. And that was true even of Egypt, okay? And that's true, you find that in a lot of African countries historically. The Queen Mother rules almost side by side with the king or the ruler, and and in some ways has a lot of, shall we say, ritual power. Okay, well you could definitely see this in the 25th dynasty with Ethiopia, with Kush, which had to come from the south to reestablish order and the civilization of Egypt, and that was the fabled 25th dynasty. Now, what Pianki did, he established his sisters as the chief priestesses of Amun. Now, that's like the Pope of ancient Egypt. Chief priest of Amun was like the Egyptian Pope, the most important sacerdotal position in all of ancient Egypt. And he put his sisters in that position, okay? And of course, his wife, I forget her name, she remained behind in Ethiopia, and she kind of held the kingdom together. Now, the names of those the sisters, they ruled one after the other. The first one was called Amanirdis, okay? The second one was called Shepanupit. And they were the chief priestesses of Amun. They were the pope, they were the female popes of ancient Egypt, all right? Now, what happened with Ethiopia, unfortunately, is that they were eventually conquered and driven out by the Assyrians. And then the Persians take over. But interestingly enough,
and that was in Ethiopia?
No. I'm sorry.
In Egypt.
No, this is in Egypt. Sorry,
Okay,
I'm sorry if I'm if I'm confusing that, because now we're still talking about 25th dynasty that got conquered by the Assyrians and eventually led to the 26th dynasty. Mm-hmm. But they never removed Shepanupit from her position as the Pope. I'm using that word Pope, as the chief priestess of Amun. They left her alone. They left her right in place, okay? Somewhere, about 715 BC. Now, but back in Ethiopia, or Kush, the intense, what I want to call a matriarchal construct of the society and of the rulership was not only in place, but it became intensified, as it were. The queen mother became ever more powerful, all right? And she had a name, her title was Kendaki. And Kendaki meant queen mother. But it wasn't just a ceremonial position. As I've already said, it was a very powerful, important position, all right? The Kendaki. And the Romans later on called them the Candaces, because after the kings from about the 7th century on of Kush or Ethiopia were always had their mothers as their second most important powerful people in the kingdom. So the queen mothers kind of co-ruled. Then there came a time, however, when at least 5 Candaces, that's what the Romans call them, Candaces, Candace. Instead of Kentucky, the Romans turned the name into Candace. And we all know individuals who are named Candace. Well, that's where that comes from. Candace was the name of an Ethiopian, was a queen mother, Ethiopian queen. But she began, 5 of them ruled alone. I mean, when I say ruled in their own right. 5 of them, okay? All the way up until the end of that phase of Ethiopian history, about 300 BC. No, excuse me, 300 AD. Now, what was interesting, though, powerful people in the kingdom. So the queen mothers kind of co-ruled. Then there came a time, however, when at least 5 Candaces, that's what the Romans call them, Candaces, Candace. Instead of Kentucky, the Romans turned the name into Candace. And we all know individuals who are named Candace. Well, that's where that comes from. Candace was the name of an Ethiopian, was a queen mother, Ethiopian queen. But she began, 5 of them ruled alone. I mean, when I say ruled in their own right. 5 of them, okay? All the way up until the end of that phase of Ethiopian history.
Can't leave our family. Our family is too beautiful and too strong. So we don't want to leave them.